Hi, it's Mark here again. Here we have a video explaining the if statement. In the column here we have supervisor approval. We've got employees, we've got the hours worked, they've got the pay, bonuses, and then we've got total payments. We've got a threshold of £600 dictated to us, for example. So we can see that a couple of them are over 600. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that before payment is released, the company authorises it just in case. Now, this is just an imaginary situation. It could be used for all sorts of things, the if statement. The if statement is handy for highlighting or to mark something up in a certain way, to actually identify it, to say, here, look at me. It could also be used for calculations as well, if certain criteria is met. So let's have a wee look at the if statement with the if statement, the if function within a formula. It's also known as the if statement. So in this cell here, and then we're going to copy it down. We're going to be using relative referencing and absolute referencing. If you're not too sure what is meant by that, have a look at the videos for relative referencing and especially absolute referencing. So what we can do is to paste the function. When we paste the function, I'm showing you the long way around. I could just type it in, there's shortcuts, but I'm going to show you the long way around because when you know the long way around, there's no limits to what you can find in terms of functions. What we do is we type in here where it says type a brief description of what you want to do and then click go. Use keywords for what you want to do. So if we'll just leave it as if, because it's if. Okay, there might be a few things that come up for if. So if we click on go, you'll see that there is. So you could go through them all if you wanted to. So if tells you, checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another value if false. We've also got if error, returns value if error, if expression is an error. So there's various different ones here, okay, and they could help in some way. There's various different ones, and they can combine functions as well. So with the if statement, you can also have nested if statements. So you could have an if this happens, but what if that happens? But we're going to keep it just to the if statement just now. So it's just one if statement. As with all functions, when you're doing it this way, you've got a help in this function. So we click on OK. It now gives us the function arguments. So it's if, and it says the logical test. Now we know what if does because we read it. It checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another if false. So it's just confirming there again for you underneath. Logical test. As we go through each of the function arguments, it tells us for each one what it wants. So logical test is any value or expression that can be evaluated to true or false. So if you read it out to yourself, sometimes it makes it easier if you write it down as to what you want to do. So you have it clear in your head. So if we want to know if the total payment is more than the threshold. So if we click on the cell, I always like to click on cells. You can type it in, but click on the cell. So it's if, in this instance, F2, and we need an operator. So the greater than operator. Using the help in this function, sometimes you can look through the help facility and eventually find what you're looking for, and you'll see the different operators that might or can be used. So greater than, and again, I prefer things to be in a cell as opposed to the figure being put into the calculation itself, into the formula. So if we're using the cell there, and I'll show you why later on. So if F2 is greater than B13. What do you want to happen if it is greater? So in other words, if the value is true. So if we click on the next cell, it tells you there as well, value if true is the value that is returned if the logical test is true. If it's omitted, true is returned. And it's saying there as well, I did mention nested if statements. You can actually nest up to 7 different if functions, but we will just stay to the one just now. So value if true, if it does meet that. So we want to maybe flag up requires approval. Nowadays, when we move into what happens if false, it will come up with the quotation marks denoting that it's text for requires approval, because we could actually tell it that it must be this cell or this must happen. So there's various different ways of building up your formula for the if statement. So requires approval. What if it's false? What do we want to happen? Well, if you don't want anything in the cell, what you could do is you could just put a space. You could put blank. You could put anything you want in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put something in there to say it's acceptable. So we'll just put it's OK. Payment can be made. There we go. So if we click on OK, that's what we get there. It is OK. Always OK. So now we've got to think about filling this down so that each of them are calculated out as to whether it is above the threshold or not. Imagine if you had quite a large spreadsheet. It doesn't take you long doing this, so it's much better than you trying to calculate and look it through. Let Excel work for you. So if we were to move this down, F2 will become F3. We do want that. B13, as we move down one row, that'll become B14. There's nothing in B14. So therefore, absolute referencing for B13 for the threshold amount. So again, F4. And if you're unsure as to relative referencing and absolute referencing, take a look at the videos that I've got for you. I'm now going to enter. Now we can fill it down. And there we have. So requires approval, 2 of them. Now there's a reason why I said to use cells instead of figures within formulae. What happens if the threshold is lowered? So your boss or whoever within an organisation turns around and says to you, your colleague says, that needs to be reduced to 500. We've got to be more careful now and ensure that the supervisor approves anything that is over 500. Well, we can see that there are some that are over 500, under the 600, but over 500. So for example, the one here, 52448, the moment it says OK. There's also the one down here, 2 underneath that, 59704, and a 55004. So there are ones there, and there's actually 3 that we can see straight away. If it was quite a large spreadsheet, imagine you trying to go through, and imagine if you had actually put the figure into the formula. How long would that take you? This is going to take seconds, and then that's us done. So I've shown you the if statement. That's done. That's finished with. I'm just now focusing on why we refer to a cell within formulae, because it's much easier. So 500, there, all done. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope you've learned something. Hope I've been of use to you. All the best. Bye just now.